Hey friends, today I wanted to share a book with you that I'm sure you're all familiar with, but it is one of my favorite stories. And it is Harold and the Purple Crayon by Crockett Johnson. One evening, after thinking it over some time, Harold decided to go for a walk in the moonlight. There wasn't any moon, and Harold needed a moon for a walk in the moonlight, and he needed something to walk on. So he drew the moon, and he drew a path to walk on. He made a long, straight path so he wouldn't get lost, and he set off on his walk, taking his big purple crayon with him. But he didn't seem to be getting anywhere on the long, straight path, so he left the path for a shortcut across a field, and the moon went with him. The moon's following him everywhere he goes. The shortcut led right to where Harold thought a forest ought to be. He didn't want to get lost in the woods, so he made a very small forest with just one tree in it. That is a small forest. Usually forests have lots of trees. It turned out to be an apple tree. The apples would be very tasty, Harold thought, when he got tired. Or when they got red. And also when he gets tired. He could eat when he's ready to go take a nap. So he put a frightening dragon under the tree to guard the apples. It was a terribly frightening dragon. So the dragon is guarding the tree. It even frightened Harold. He backed away. His hand holding the purple crayon shook. He's shaking. I wonder what's going to happen if he keeps drawing wiggly lines. Suddenly he realized what was happening, but by then Harold was over his head in an ocean. All those wiggly lines that he drew turned into an ocean. He came up thinking fast, and in no time he was climbing aboard a trim little boat. Sometimes we have to think on our feet and think quickly. He quickly set sail, and the moon sailed along with him. The moon is still following him. After he had sailed long enough, Harold made land without much trouble. He stepped ashore on the beach, wondering where he was. So he drew an anchor to hold his boat down onto the beach. The sandy beach reminded Harold of picnics, and the thought of picnics made him hungry. So he laid out a nice, simple picnic lunch. I wonder what will happen after he draws that one pie. There was nothing but pie. But there were all 9 kinds of pie that Harold liked best. So he drew 9 pies for himself. That's a lot of pies. When Harold finished his picnic, there was quite a lot left. He hated to see so much delicious pie go to waste. I wonder what he's drawing. So Harold left a very hungry moose and a deserving porcupine to finish it up. And off he went, looking for a hill to climb to see where he was. So he drew a moose and a porcupine to finish his pies. Harold knew that the higher up he went, the farther he could see, so he decided to make the hill into a mountain. If he went high enough, he thought he could see the window of his bedroom. So instead of drawing a little hill, he's decided to draw a huge mountain. He was getting tired, and he felt he ought to be getting to bed. He hoped he could see his bedroom window from the top of the mountain. How high that mountain is. He drew it even past the moon, high up in the sky. But as he looked down over the other side, he slipped, and there wasn't any other side of the mountain. He was falling into thin air. He's falling. I wonder how that made him feel. But luckily, he kept his wits and his purple crayon, and he made a balloon, and he grabbed onto it. He thought quickly, and he saved himself. I think I would be afraid falling out of that mountain. And he made a basket under the balloon big enough to stand in. He had a fine view from the balloon, but he couldn't see his window. He couldn't even see a house. So he's still pretty far up in the sky. So he made a house with windows, and he landed the balloon on the grass in the front yard. I think that sounds pretty safe. None of the windows was his window, but he tried to think of where his window ought to be. He made some more windows. He made a big building full of windows. That's a lot of windows. He made lots of buildings full of windows. He made a whole city full of windows. So he went from making one house to a whole entire city. But none of the windows was his window. He couldn't think of where it might be. He sure has come a long way. He decided to ask a policeman. The policeman pointed the way Harold was going anyway, but Harold thanked him. So he drew a policeman. When he walked along with the moon, wishing he was in his room and in bed, then suddenly Harold remembered. So he's still walking. I wonder what he's thinking about. He remembered where his bedroom window was when there was a moon. It was always right around the moon. So he drew his window around the moon, and the moon has stayed this whole time. Then Harold made his bed. He got in it and drew up the covers. He's finally in his room. The purple crayon dropped on the floor, and Harold dropped off to sleep. So he went on a big adventure. And I remember we told a very big adventure story in our class. So I challenge you to think of your own adventure, and maybe you can draw out your adventure just like Harold did. Y'all have fun.